Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Wakefield. I'm the CDBG Program Manager here at the Office of Community and Rural Affairs. And if you are joining me this morning or afternoon, whenever you're choosing to watch this, chances are you are new to our COVID relief program and possibly new to our electronic grant management system as well. So I am going to do a virtual walkthrough with a test client and account to kind of walk through the process of what you'll see as you get ready to submit a proposal for your COVID response phase 3 application with your community. I'm not going to get into the technical details of the questions and what needs to be in them. For most of them, this will be primarily navigating the system and making sure you have the correct information and materials in the place where it needs to be. So I'm going to just start by doing a walkthrough of our general Indiana Grants Management System. You can get to it from our webpage, or you can see the site up here, which is Indiana eGMS.force.com/grants with a capital G. And it will take you to this landing page after you sign in. If you need help and assistance signing in, I'm going to encourage you to contact the community liaison for your region, and they can help you get set up with an account into our portal. So you'll notice our portal has this as the general landing page. It has the home account details. These are the two buttons I will go into in depth that you'll need to access as you're creating an application. But to get started and create an application, you're going to want to go down to our eligible agencies and list of programs. This is a CDBG, Community Development Block Grant. So you can start by clicking on that and then reading over sort of the general information. And this is where you're actually going to launch an application or proposal application for the eligible programs. As you can see, our COVID-19 phase 3 is the only one that is eligible right now. If you have not created an application before, the only button you'll see is going to be this Begin COVID-19 phase 3. So in order to create a new application, I'm going to go ahead and launch that. And it will take you to this interactive screen here. So this is all of the sections within the application that will need to be completed in order for you to submit an application or a proposal application, which then will become an application as part of that process. So that will be due sometime early in the next month in February. But you'll see that every time you create a grant application, it will have a unique identifier, this 2463, as we call the ADM. If you have any questions about your application, you're talking to OCRA staff, typically it's easiest just to know this number so we can go into our system and see what you are looking at. You'll notice that it is a draft, so this application status will change as you go through the process of completing the proposal, submitting it. It takes a review and then opens back up in an application, and then that process repeats until you finally do submit an application and hopefully it is awarded. But say you want to go back to that home page, the landing page, you can always click home and this will take you here. If you want to get back into the application that you just created, you have a couple options. You can go to the CDBG block grants and then resume the COVID-19 phase 3. This will take you to the last application that you created. So if you've created multiple, you'll need to know that this is only going to be the last one that you created, or you can go to your account details. And this is split into the applications and administration. The applications are anything that you have created in our system. The administration is for, after award, administering that grant. So for this purpose, we're just going to look at the application, and we'll see that the draft that we just created is here under 2463. I believe that was the number, but if you don't see it, chances are because it came in this is only looking at the recently viewed applications. It's always going to default to that. So if you're not seeing anything here and you're panicking, click this down arrow first and then see if it is under one of the particular applications. So in this case, I'll go to my grant applications, and yep, still this one. So this is the most recent one available. And we can go ahead and get started. So in order to be able to successfully submit an application, each one of these sections is going to need to be filled out in full. Until that happens, you won't be able to see a submit button. There's a validate and submit as the last section. You won't be able to submit it unless everything is filled out in full. Now, because this is an application system that was built kind of for our regular CDBG processes, where it doesn't fit this phase 3 COVID program perfectly. So we're going to be putting in some placeholder or either records, uploads, or documentation, as well as dates that will need to be corrected in the application, or it's going to be a placeholder throughout the entire application just because it's not necessary. So I'm going to kind of highlight those as we go along. But the first thing you're going to see if you go into section 1 is that you're going to look for your lead applicant, and you're going to see this red asterisk. And basically, anywhere you see this, it means it's required. So you will not be able to submit until you've fulfilled filling in something here. Again, just because this is fulfilled and you're able to move on and it's check completed, it doesn't mean that you put in the correct information. It just means that you've put in something. So for this video, we're going to use our test account, which we typically use is the town of Colette. And so I'm going to pull this up here. You'll notice that this, the federal ID, the DUNS number, as well as CAGE and SAM's expiration are all filled in automatically. If you type in your town and you don't see any of this information, or you type in your town and you're not finding it, you're going to need to reach out to your community liaison, and they can help set up this information. So you'll provide them with this information, but they'll put it in our system on the back end. So this will automatically fill in for you, and each time you select your community, it'll automatically be there and saved. Obviously, the SAM's expiration is something that is a moving target. As you can see, this is out of date, so you will need to update it if it is expired. Same thing goes with the contacts. The contacts are only going to show what is in the system and associated with the community. So if you've created a new community and you've let our community liaisons know to create that new community, we also need contacts for that. So we'll need the chief elected official. In this case, we'll say it is Megan Who, and the treasurer will make Mike Joker. So these two contacts are associated with this applicant. If there are no contacts for this applicant, you won't see anyone here. So you'll need to work with the community liaison to get this updated so that you're able to submit that application or be able to submit the proposal. These are two uploads that if you have them, they're great to put in now. They'll carry over through the application, but they're not required at this time for proposal. So if you do have a applicant W-9, direct deposit, those are helpful to put in now, but you can wait till application as well. If you're using a subrecipient, you'll need to make sure that the subrecipient is in our system as well and included in this. Obviously, this isn't required, but if you are going to be using a subrecipient, which many of you might be, you'll want to make sure that they are adequately entered into our system so that you're able to find them here. You likely will not have an architect or an engineer. And then the final one is, do you have any open grants? And hopefully it is no. So go to next, and it will automatically save as we go along. If we go back home to see, you can see that the first section has been completed. So you'll need to do all of these check marks. For project information for eligibility, there's a lot of different sections. Typically, the ones that you're going to see for COVID are going to be at the bottom. And so you'll select the eligible activity. If you're doing multiple eligible activities, you're going to put this in here, multiple, and then we'll define them later. You're going to do the estimated number of beneficiaries. This should be either based on your census data or the number of people or number of jobs that you think you'll be retaining. This is something that we'll be able to update as we go along, so it isn't set in stone, but we would like to see some estimation of how many people will benefit from these particular grant dollars. So we're just going to say that. You're also going to need to have a project address. In this case, if you're working at multiple projects, there's multiple businesses, this can just be the town hall or the center forever who is going to be administering the grant. If it is happening at a specific site or location, you can put this in as well as a possibility. So. I'll just say for the purposes of this. And then you're also going to want to select the county. You can select multiple counties if the service area is in multiple counties for this project. Also, you're going to put in your method of procurement, not applicable if it is not required, or if you have not procured yet, or RFP or local funds, so you'll select those. Likely is not going to be applicable for the architect or engineer. You're going to have your fair housing ordinance when it was updated, as well as you won't have any planning grants associated with this, and then select your state senator, House of Representatives, at least that best represent your project. For national objectives, you're going to select the way in which you are qualifying for this. If it is based on a jobs benefit, so that you are retaining jobs, you select this one. Otherwise, it'll likely be a low to moderate income person's area benefit or limited clientele. If you have multiple, because you're doing multiple activities, please work with your CL to advise on how you should select and fill this out. They'll be able to answer those questions more specifically. This is just going to be a brief description sentence of how and why you qualify for that. So I'm going to put in some placeholder data, but you'll include kind of the methodology in which you qualified. This is a brief description. We don't need your full methodology at this time. And then this is going to be your census percentage. Chances are, and this is just for the service area that you're looking at. And then you're going to look at the eligible track numbers. I'm going to put in some placeholder data, and same thing with the block groups as well. I'll put in some placeholder data for this as well to fill those required fields. So any block group or any census tracts that are benefiting from this project, in which people are benefiting, in which the project is taking place, you're going to want to include in here as well. If you have an income survey that you are using, you'll put this in here. So it's going to be that percentage from your low to moderate income survey that you use here, and then include the date that was started, completed, description, as well as affirming that it is certified. Chances are you're not qualifying by blight clearance. However, you will need to go through and upload that information in the process, but for this, we likely will not need this as part of that. So having filled all those, we can go to next, which gets us into the narrative portion of the project. And this is where we're going to want to see, even at proposal, a relatively detailed description of your project. So this is what you'll be doing and who will be benefiting, so that the scoring committee will be able to understand what your project is. It should be specific to your community. It should not be general or vague. So you should have a pretty good idea of what are the conditions within your community and what this project will do. The summary of work section is not required for a proposal, but just so you understand what we do with the summary of work is that the summary of work is really just it's a paragraph that we kind of use to cover, we use for media announcements or for brief descriptions of what we are funding. So this is what would be posted in an award announcement to describe your project. So it shouldn't be just a copy and paste of your project description. It shouldn't just be bullet points. It's going to be kind of going over what will be happening with this awarded grant. You'll also need to upload a scope of work as well as a project area map, and also include a detailed budget, ideally using our budget table provided on our website. Look for that for our CDBG projects. We typically like to see that detailed budgets organized in that budget table. If you're not familiar with it, contact your community liaison and they'll be able to point you to where that is. And once you have fulfilled those, so we have not yet done an upload yet, but these are required uploads, and you should have those. So in order to fulfill those, I have a test document that I use, but you'll typically have a PDF or Excel file. We prefer PDFs for almost all of our files, except for this detailed budget. You can use a PDF of your budget, but we prefer that you just send in that Excel file. And then you'll see that these are here. You can remove them if you don't want them, or you upload the wrong document. And again, these don't test that. This doesn't make sure that you upload the correct detailed budget. It just is affirming that you've uploaded something here. Same thing goes with project need. This again is your brief description in this project of why this project is needed, answering kind of those questions that the scoring committee will be looking at, and then uploading anything that will be included. So we don't have any requirements for proposal right now, but if you do have any documentation that you're referencing in your project need, or any photos that help illuminate the issues that are being addressed, this would be a great time to put them in now if you have them. However, they're not required. So moving into next, anytime you want to check on the status of where we are, you can go back here. You can see, well, it looks like these didn't get checked for some reason. So it must be some piece of information was missing. So let's see. Oh, looks like our census number didn't get put in correctly. So that didn't get saved. And then let's go ahead and do next. And it looks like this one didn't, so I didn't actually put in anything for the project description. And let's go next, and we can hit home. And those are now fully filled out. Same thing with, this is the last portion of the narrative portion. Again, we're going to want specific financial impact details of how this has affected the community or those benefiting. So you're going to want to add that in for your proposal. That is the only required part. In applications, you will find that you're going to need more specific details for those applicant financials and those subrecipient financials. So these aren't required fields yet, and subrecipient isn't a required field at any time. But if you are using a subrecipient, you'll need to make sure that you include this. This is kind of your summary budget table, and this is where you're going to need to fill out what is kind of the cost breakdowns in general for the activity that you'll be pursuing. If it's economic development, you'll put that in here, what you're covering with CDBG dollars, what you're covering with local match, and then any ineligible amount that may be included as well. So in this case, let's say we're doing an economic development project. We are asking for $250,000, and we're going to do 27,000 for grant administration. And one of the things that is important to note, because for this particular grant, the local with eligible in-kind is not required. So we don't have a local match requirement. However, this grants management table and our logic within it is going to make sure that it's going to be checking that they are lining up. So this number for this local match needs to match this local match sources. So even if you don't have one, we're able to see that it. So one of the nice things, though, if you do not have a local match, is that you don't need to fill this out at all, because this zero sum will match zero sum in your local match. However, if you have a local match, say you're taking it out of the grant administration, it's coming out of the local match, then we're going to want to see where that local match is coming from. Perhaps it is in kind, and it is coming from just from the town, and then that amount is going to need to match that number right here. If it doesn't match, you're going to see a kind of red mark letting you know that these are incongruous, and that it does need to match what's there. The other option here is you can just do, and so I'll show you just to show you that if this is 0, you don't need to fill in anything for this, so long as you are not asking for. So as long as this is 0, these all need to be filled in. But you should be able to go to next. So let's go home. So now that since you did put something in here, this is actually good to know. Learning all the time. This has stayed static. So until this amount, we need to make sure that this amount goes back to 0 so that it matches this one. So we'll put the amount in at 0. And because this is here, we need to put something in here. So we'll just put none and other. And then that fulfills the requirement. And we can hit next and go home. And we'll see that now we have completed the requirement for the financials and gap. We're going to go to the next section, which is public hearing. And so this is one that we're going to get a lot of questions about, because this page is not going to match what is required for this application. So particularly in this case, you're going to see the required at proposal and required at application. We know that the public hearing is not a requirement for proposal. It is a requirement for application. So we're going to break them down into the first and second public hearing. So your first public hearing is going to be the one that you do before application. So this first public hearing required before application is you're going to put this in for this section. So you may not have done your application yet, or you may have not done your public hearing yet, and that's fine. But in the system, we need to see that something is in here. And so this could be even in the future. Say you're not doing your public hearing until, let's say March 10th. And so this would be when you put out the notice for if you're going to do the public hearing. We know we need to have at least 10 days in between the posting and the date. So let's add up to 20 and see, it didn't quite meet because it needs to be 10 days greater from the date of posting. So that fulfills the requirement. So even if you're going to do the public hearing in the future, you're going to put those expected dates here at the required at proposal. And if you have done your public hearing, you can go ahead and put in this public hearing ad, the affidavit, the sign-in sheet, public hearing minutes. If not, you still need to put something here. So this is something that you can just put in as a placeholder. So kind of your test that I do, or just noting, maybe it's a Word doc that says will be completed at the time of application, just so that you have a reminder. And so I'm going to put these in for each one of these. The important thing that you'll want to note for these is that they will be, you'll need to remove these and add in your actual first public hearing ad, first public hearing affidavit, first public hearing sign-in, as well as the public hearing minutes. I'm jumping ahead really quick because this section obviously is not required yet because this is intended to be at application, but for the actual completing of the proposal, you can leave this blank, but when you do an application, this is going to be where you just project out when you think you'll have your second public hearing. So it could be way in the future, depending on when you believe it will be held as part of the process, but you can just put in those placeholder dates, and then you'll put in these placeholder documentation as well. If you are having someone else conduct your public hearing, you'll need to have the third-party authorization, and you'll need to upload that document as well. Put in their name, and then you'll include your 4-factor analysis required for English language proficiency, and then also include a language access plan if necessary. So in this case, you'll include your 4-factor analysis. I'm going to put in a placeholder data. And then we're ready to move on to the next one. And this is going to be ER. So there's a ton of stuff for ER, and we're going to need to put in some placeholder dates. But first, we're going to put in our required ER. Very, 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 very likely, and I don't think I can think of an example yet, but you're going to be exempt as part of your ER. And then you're most likely going to say yes, because you're not going to have any. You're going to list the agencies that need to be contacted. If none need to be, you're going to enter not applicable, NA, which is likely, and as well as this section as well. Again, if you're excluded, you're just going to do not applicable. However, you're still going to need to include these dates. So even though they are not required, they are a required field in our system. Thus, we're going to ask you to put in some placeholder dates. And if you put them in for contacted at proposal, you're going to need to put them in for application as well. So I would encourage you to just go ahead and put in the placeholders. We prefer that you use a placeholder date for dates that won't be in the future, or dates that will never happen, as 1-1/1800. So that we know that that is obviously not a real date. And you can go ahead and copy and paste for all of these required, but clearly not required, environmental review and environmental outreach that you would need to do if you're doing a non-exempt project, likely. I'm not going to fill these in, but in the proposed application, you would need to fill out these as well with those placeholder dates, or the dates that will not happen. Finally, moving to readiness to proceed, you're going to affirm the ones that are necessary. Obviously, there's no architect or engineer. You would need to do those. Chances are you're not going to have any site control issues. If you do, you're going to include these, but you're likely not doing acquisition. So you're going to fill in these to the best of your ability. If you have questions, let your community liaisons know. and then any comments you might have explaining your answers. Again, for site control, chances are you're not going to have anything here, but if you do, you'll check those. Permitting, chances are you're not going to have any permitting, but if you do, you'll read through those. And then, again, chances are you won't have to do issue floodplain or displacement plan, but you'll update those documents if necessary. This is other uploads. So these are things that potentially you want to include either as reference documents in your application from your narrative, or something like that isn't required but is like the third-party authorization. You can go ahead and put this in here. It's not a required section, so we can just go next. Utility rates, also not another required section. We're not interested in your utility rates for this particular program, so you're going to go ahead and hit next. You don't need to fill out anything in this. So you can see we are very close to the end here into our legal section. And so this is where you are going to affirm and upload some of the required documents. Some has already been done. So again, because this is just proposal, the only real affirmation we're going to need is directly from the administrator who is submitting this, but you still will need to have all of these done for your application itself. And you are going to need to include your fair housing ordinance, your drug-free policy. Those are required. So you'll upload those documents. And I'm just going to leave this one blank just to let you, just so we can see. Fafada, you're going to answer these. And then you're going to authorize to submit. We don't have a signature page upload for proposal, but there will be one that will be necessary at application. So I'm going to go to next. And so when we go, this takes us to our validate and submit button. You'll see that there's a submit button, but I can't access it because not everything has been filled out. So this little dialog box lets you know that everything that is not filled out or is not uploaded. So there is an attached supporting documentation necessary for the assurances and certifications of the drug-free policy. So everywhere where there is a required field that you have not filled out, you will need to go back and rectify those. So if we go home, we'll see that which sections have not been fully filled out. We can go to legal and then find the one that we missed, which is that drug-free policy. We'll include the documentation. And then going back here, this is just going to be a quick summation here. You'll notice that the lead applicant didn't fill out. This is going to, once you assign a lead applicant, this will be updated when you refresh the page. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick refresh and see what happens. So obviously it takes us home, but it did fill out that lead applicant for the town of Colette. So we can go back to our validate and submit, and you'll see here that it's kind of just a summation of sort of the project address, your financials, just so you can verify, do a quick double check without having to look back through. This is what you are submitting for these people, this community, and then the amount here of request is included as well. So if everything is good and you've checked it over, had everyone look at it, you can go ahead and submit it, and you'll get a success. It's been submitted successfully. You'll notice that the application status still says draft, and this is where you're going to want to hit refresh again, and you should see it pushed into proposal submitted. That means it's on our end, and we will move it through our process of scheduling site visits, conducting the site visit, and then once that has been completed, we'll then reopen it again as an application draft as part of our process. So there's nothing you need to see here or need to do at this point, but you're going to want to make sure that this application is proposal submitted. If you see that, you know that we will see it on our end as a successfully submitted proposal. If this never changes or you don't get that success, let us know. And there might be, there's something we can help troubleshoot. Not unheard of. That we've seen errors or something happen where there's the Salesforce goes down at an opportune time. So just let us know, and we can work through that process with you. But in the last year or so since we've been using our updated GMS, we have not had many application submittal issues. But we are certainly open to working with you in case you run into any particular problems. Again, your community liaisons are going to be a great resource in answering some of the specific questions about your project, as well as if you have questions about the grants management system or CDBG in general. You're always welcome to contact myself as well. Again, I'm Matt Wakefield here at our CDBG team at OCRA. So with that said, that hopefully gives you everything that you need to do to be able to successfully submit a proposal, and hopefully answers a few of the questions about what we're looking for in those submitted proposals as well. If this is helpful, we'll likely do another one for applications as well to hopefully clarify some of those questions of what is or isn't necessary, or what some basic troubleshooting common issues that we've seen going through that process. So again, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully this was helpful to you all. Thanks.